Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah Talk. Our guest this week is Rabbi Asher Lopatin, and he's the spiritual leader of Chicago's Anshe Sholom Bnei Israel congregation. Hello from Tel Aviv.
Hello from, actually I'm in San Francisco.
Yes, I know you're on the West Coast now. I realize that. So our Parsha this week is Behar-Bechukotai. In this Parsha, what we have different rules of Shemitah, the sabbatical year. We have some rules about the Yovel, the Jubilee year. We have rules related to bankruptcy, what happens when someone becomes a slave, a lot of promises for those following the rules of the Torah, and some threats for those who do not choose to follow the rules of the Torah. This is the general outline of the Parsha. It begins with דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם כי תבואו אל הארץ אשר אני נותן לכם ושבתה הארץ שבת לאדוני. Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. Now I have a very simple question for you. You lead a congregation in Chicago. What is this parsha for you? It speaks mostly about rules related to the state of Israel or to the land of Israel.
Well, I actually think that the idea of Shemitah, the idea of taking a break and devoting yourself, the land, to God, and realizing that everything you do is devoted to God, works very well in definitely the professional community that I live in. So it's just a very small jump from the agricultural message of the Parsha to the message of people that are working hard to earn a living and to advance their careers. I think it's really the Zel Bazach, the same thing.
So what you're actually doing is you're taking the principles laid out for the Shemitah, for the land, and you try to make them adaptable for everyday life of the 21st century Chicago?
Exactly. It's really following the guidance of Rashi, who in many places say, Eina pasuk omeret ela darsheni. These words of taking a break, of Shabbat LaHashem, of how you treat your workers and animals and everyone else, they're really begging us to say that it's not just limited to one place and one time, but that really it applies to us every day. And I think in general it's critical that is every pasuk in the Torah we have to find a meaning for us. Without, of course, abandoning the original meaning that we're connected to Eretz Yisrael and how central Eretz Yisrael is, but at the same time it's got to be meaningful for us in Chicago or San Francisco or wherever we are.
And what do you do? How do you translate for a 21st century crowd the second part of the parsha? It says, "Im bechukotai telechu," if you walk in my status and keep my commandments and do them, then I will give you rains in their seasons, and the land shall yield its produce, etc. But then it also says, well, if you don't hearken into me and will not do happen to you. How do you relate this to an audience that is more accustomed to personal choice and not to commandments?
Well, I think that the idea of suffering is such a powerful idea, and it relates to all of us, and we suffer in different ways. You suffer in high school, you don't get the grade you want in a test. You suffer in college when you break up with your girlfriend. And you suffer, throughout life when your child, doesn't do what you want them to do, and then you get pride, and when they do. So I think that the idea of schar v'onesh, the strict idea of reward and punishment, is a difficult idea to explain to people. But the idea of suffering in galut, suffering in the diaspora, or suffering in our own personal lives, is extremely relevant, and people need to hear that. I think it's those psukim of people suffering so much and in such deprivation are maybe the most relevant psukim to us, and especially now, all these amazing documentaries about the Holocaust. Yes, I think we have to sort of separate the idea of, if you if you don't follow me properly, from the suffering itself. And
Yeah, it
one other
becomes
point I would
it
make,
becomes almost scary. I will appoint terror over you, even consumption and fever, and shall make the eyes to fail and the soul to languish. It's really scary.
it's scary, but at the same time, what the psukim are saying is that we still maintain our connection to Hashem through any kind of suffering. And you have elements of Viktor Frankl in the Holocaust, elements of even Anne Frank, who still maintains her faith and connection even in suffering. And so I think that's, for me, that's the more important message, really. I'm, not as moved by the idea of the threat of punishment. Maybe other people are. So the Torah is for everyone. But for me, it's more important to know that I remain connected to Hashem, and the Jewish people remain connected to each other, even in the deprivation. And the incredible thing is at the end of the pasuk, Lo Ma'astim, that God says, Av Gamzot, even with all the suffering, I have not rejected the Jewish people. And